Leon, good morning. Thank you for joining me for breakfast
Thank you very
and
much.
coffee. You've got an exciting year ahead of you. Another book
Hope so.
and an event. Let's talk about the book quickly.
It's my third book. It will be launched hopefully at the IAF. Publishing date by the company called PMC in Germany. They said it will be available as from March.
So we've got an exciting year coming up. I believe you've put together an event called African Track and Technology Symposium. I'm looking forward to hearing some more about this.
Yeah, it is something that actually started quite a couple of years ago when I realized there's a great need for knowledge in Africa, because then already they started with a greater focus on track and the importance of track and understanding how important track is in any economy. Africa is very rich in minerals, as we all know, but if you haven't got a method of actually transporting the minerals from the mine to somewhere else, like a harbour or something, or even a factory, then the mineral is worth nothing. So what we're finding now is that there is a great explosion now in the railway industry in Africa, but there's no knowledge there. And already in the early 2000s, I have done some lectures all over Southern Africa, and then already I realized there's a very big demand for knowledge.
So the underlying themes for the African Track and Technology Symposium is to construct, maintain and renew. And I think those are quite key, judging what's happening up in Africa in terms of not just the new lines going in, but the rehabilitation and maintenance of their current meter gauge. And just looking at how in the future they're going to be building their own internal capacity to maintain those lines. And I think this symposium will play a practical role in that.
If you look at Africa in general now, there seems to be a drive on new lines, as we see in Kenya, through Kenya and Tanzania. There are new lines coming up, they must be maintained. In Zambia, we've seen a lot of emphasis on maintaining existing lines. Same in Namibia. Botswana has been quite active in maintenance for a number of years. Ghana is very active. So there's a lot of African countries that's either busy building new lines or busy renewing lines, or just making sure that the lines they have already is just maintained to a standard where it can continue to be a productive and cost-effective economical line.
The idea with African Track and Technology, this symposium, I believe you're going to be launching it here in South Africa in July, and then the idea is then to take it throughout Africa.
The idea was to have the teething problems in South Africa for the simple reason it is close by, and we can learn from what problems we can expect. And then I would like to take it into Africa and then make appointments with all African railways and ask them, listen, please come to the Johannesburg one, come and have a look. And if you like what you see, which I'm pretty sure they will, then let's make a date for us to come to you and come and do the same symposium there in your country, where you can then invite everybody from the lowest level up to the highest level in the railways to come and learn about track maintenance. So what we want them to do, we want to invite the African railways to come to the Johannesburg Symposium. Come and have a look at it, and go back to your railways, go back to the decision makers if you're not the decision maker, and make an appointment for this symposium to then come to your country, where you can then invite everybody from the lowest to the highest level in the railways to come and learn about track construction, track maintenance and track renewal.
Let's look at some of the topics that you're going to be covering, and I want to take it from some of the latest challenges that operators have. So, how do you deal with your track when you've had a flood and a wash away? What is the most efficient way of dealing with that?
Flooding is only one possible problem that you have when it comes to emergency maintenance. That is obviously emergency maintenance, and that involves a fair amount, well, depending on how bad the flood was, it involves a fair amount of reconstruction. What we need to consider, what's happening at the moment in Africa, is there are financiers involved, there are other railways involved, there are contractors involved, and some of them are there for the maintenance, some of them are there just for the construction, but they need to have in-house knowledge. I mean, if there's a sudden flood and a washaway or whatever, who's going to fix it? Who's going to do the emergency work? And that knowledge needs to be in the railways itself, I think, most of the time. So it's very important that they have understanding of this type of maintenance activities.
So vegetation and control, or control of vegetation, how important is that?
Vegetation is very important. It's also one of those aspects where when it comes to labor-intensive maintenance, that is perfect to be done, for instance, by local communities. Now, that's a big drive in Africa, is how will we always involve the community? And there will always be this conflict between mechanization and contractors and labor and so on, especially when it comes to industries like the railways, which is very often owned by the government. Now, when it comes to vegetation, that's basically one of those aspects of track maintenance that can be done by hand labor, that can be done by the community. And yet it's one of the most important ones, because I've done a recent trolley inspection in an African country, and one of the things that struck me is how bad the vegetation was. Everywhere it's very, very green, and there's grass growing out of the ballast, and there's even small little trees growing out of the ballast. Now, why is that important? The problem is that prevents proper drainage of the ballast. If your ballast cannot drain the water that goes into it from rain or whatever, or water flowing from the side, it means that the formation gets saturated, and then you'll find that the life of the track basically reduces dramatically. I mean, your track should last for 30 to 50 years, but if you don't do your drainage properly, of which vegetation is one, then it can reduce to a mere few years, and you have to rehabilitate the formation, which is the renewal part of the symposium. So yes, even something as simple as seemingly unimportant as vegetation actually is very, very important.
Mechanized track maintenance, and that's part of digitalization. Where have we come from and where are we going?
Certain maintenance activities can only be done through mechanized methods. I mean, all railways nowadays, if there's a new railway line they're considering or building or rehabilitating in Africa, that's going to be a modern line. And therefore certain activities cannot be done in any other way but mechanization, or through mechanization, such as tamping or ballast cleaning. If you're going to try and still do ballast cleaning by hand, you're actually going to reduce the life of the track because of the damage you will be causing to the formation. So we are moving further and further into mechanization, and also the time that it takes for hand labor to do any form of maintenance is just too much time. So that's one of those things we just have to accept, that mechanization is becoming more and more and more important. But as I said earlier, when it comes to the labor part of it, there's still a lot of work that can be done by hand labor, and we just need to know which one of them can be done by labor effectively, and that is definitely part of the symposium as well, as there is a specific lecture on mechanization versus labor intensive maintenance.
What would you say are the top 3 key requirements in terms of track maintenance?
I would say is the line must be economical. Life cycle management, of course, is something that stands above everything. And so everything you do with regards to maintenance must have the objective of extending the life of the track for as long as possible. So therefore there are different types of maintenance approaches, and one that of course that comes to the fore, not lately but already for many years, is that of preventive maintenance. So you must basically do maintenance before there's any form of deterioration that will cause that knock-on effect if you wait too long. So it all is about predictive maintenance, it's about preventive maintenance. There are many terms being thrown around, and all of those terms will be discussed in detail as well as the symposium in terms of addressing maintenance activities. and how to prolong the life of the track and have the lowest possible life cycle cost.
And with all the events coming up, Leon, what makes this symposium the go-to event?
Yeah, that's a very important question for me, because I've been looking at what's been happening in South Africa for the last couple of years with regards to conferences and symposiums and so on, and I find we're moving further and further away from being practical, maintenance orientated. You know, that's maintenance stands above everything, and that's one thing all over Africa that I find is a problem. You know, a misunderstanding of the importance of maintenance. So we have conferences that deal so much on the political side of what we dream about and what we want and what is nice to have and all of these things, and a lot of focus on digitization and the fourth industrial revolution and all of these things, but nobody's talking about the most important thing, which is making sure that your track is going to survive.
Okay, so we're talking about the hands-on, practical approach. We're going to teach participants exactly how to do it. So now I want you to get into like the nitty-gritty, as in what these participants are actually going to get out of it.
Well, it's a slightly higher level than talking purely about how to do it. You know, we're not going down to the trackmaster level where we say this is how you take the bolt off and grease a joint. But so it's a more, I would say, engineering level. It's more about the management of track maintenance rather than the nitty-gritty of how to do it. But when it comes to management, it goes down all the way to the level of, we have this section of line, how do we maintain this, and how do we make sure this will have the longest possible track life.
And the best return on investment, because
Absolutely.
it's a full asset life cycle.
Absolutely. Life cycle is very important in this entire symposium. You know, everything is based here on life cycle management. So I'm trying to pick up on a lot of papers and a lot of emphasis that's being placed on life cycle management, which we see all over the world at the moment. Because what life cycle management is saying is, I have a track, it starts here and it has a life of, let's say, 50 years, and during that 50 years, I want this track to be as cheap as possible. Because the cheaper I can make this track, the cheaper it is to transport material on this track, and the more competitive you will be with whatever product you're transporting on this line. For example, I mean, even the iron ore industry is very competitive across the world. And unfortunately, in most cases, or many cases, the mines are inland. So you need to get the iron ore from the mine down to the harbor, and only once it's in the harbor you can actually get it to wherever the end destination is. Now, like in South Africa, the iron ore line is 862 kilometers. And how cheaply you can transport the iron ore over that line is how competitive you will be with your iron ore on the international market. So it's very, very important. And the shorter the life of the track is, the more expensive it's going to be, because the quicker you will have to start rebuilding the line again and rehabilitate the line. So life cycle management is exceptionally important, and therefore I would say the center of this whole symposium is life cycle management.
Without getting into the gauge debate, I'm assuming that your course deals with all the gauges that are now showing up on the African continent.
We talk about track maintenance. So the only real difference I've picked up over the years between the one gauge and the other gauge is that the standard gauge seems to have longer maintenance intervals than, for instance, Cape gauge. But that's about the only difference. Dynamic loading, especially when it comes to curves and everything else, is a little bit different between standard gauge and, for example, Cape gauge. So there are some differences with regards to maintenance intervals. I find in Europe, for example, the tamping cycle is quite a bit longer than what we have in South Africa on Cape gauge. Now, I've never really speculated about all the different reasons for that, but going into Africa, trying to talk about track maintenance, the gauge doesn't really play a difference. We're not going to say to them, your tamping cycle is. or anything to do with the gauge. The gauge doesn't really matter. You have a piece of asset there, you need to maintain this asset. So gauge does not really play a role at all.
Talk to me about the role that the track plays in terms of the wheel rail interface, because that's quite important, isn't it?
Yeah, it's quite interesting that I battled with that same problem in a recent consultation in an African country, where rail-wheel interaction is exceptionally important, because unlike what you would think, the profile of the rail is not just a random shape, and neither is the shape of the wheel just a random shape. There are various different radii in both the rail and the wheel, and they have to make contact at a very, very specific point in order for the two to basically interact and make sure that the train can negotiate a curve and go in a perfectly straight line. So that interaction between the wheel and the rail is exceptionally important, and yes, that is also part of the symposium. There's a specific lecture on the rail-wheel interaction, but there's also, of course, quite a few lectures on the rail itself.
Leon, I see that you've done things a little differently here. You don't necessarily have straightforward sponsors. You've got industry training partners. Elaborate for me what that means.
Okay, that is a very important part of the symposium, and what I've tried to do here is to try and keep the cost down as low as possible for the railways in Africa. And I think this is why there's not a course like this symposium in Africa, because it's just too expensive. Imagine if you have only 10 people in a specific country that can attend the symposium, what will be the cost of sending a couple of highly technical experts in the field of track maintenance to them to go and do the training? And it will just never be feasible, financially feasible. So I basically came up with an alternative concept by saying, okay, let's make it worthwhile for everybody involved to be able to do this. The railways will get the benefit of having experts in the field to come and talk to them about track material, maintenance, and all of those things. And also then for the suppliers, the contractors, the consultants, the material suppliers, for all of them to basically go there and get something out of it. So the simple concept is, let's get all of these people involved, so for them there's a marketing opportunity, so they can go there and show to that specific railways, look, I know my product, this is who I am, I have this product, I have this expertise, whatever. The railways there have the benefit of listening to these experts, and everybody benefits at the end of the day. So the way I structured this thing is to say, let's keep the cost down to a minimum for the railways, and let the money come from those that will benefit from the marketing thereof. So how I'm doing this is then inviting all the suppliers, contractors and consultants and so on, and say to them, be part of the symposium and get the opportunity of marketing your product into Africa, all of Africa, and by doing that, not only do I want you to go and do it yourself, because you want to go there anyway to do your marketing, but help us by basically contributing towards the cost of doing that. So what I refer to as participating partners, they will basically contribute a fee for marketing and advertising and whatever, and then that gives them the opportunity to go with me into Africa and to go and present this symposium.
Fantastic. And then there's also the opportunity for companies just to have a promotional table, so not necessarily contribute to the technical aspect of the symposium or presentation of papers, but also to have a promotional table.
Not everybody will be able to present something that, we only have a limited number of lectures, even though it's over 5 days, and it's very intensive, as I'm planning to start just after 8 in the morning and end at 5 o'clock every day. So it really is a very, very intensive symposium. It's not going to be a wishy-washy couple of days holiday. It's going to be really, really intensive. And not everybody can contribute to this. So we will also, and there are many suppliers, there are many different people that say, but listen, I cannot afford to do this, but I would love to be able at this, in my view, prestigious symposium to be seen, to be involved, to say that I was part of this. And for those people, we're basically saying, but what we'll have is a promotional table. If you cannot be there, we'll help you to set it up, because we'll have to go there with a team. And you can then have a promotional table. You can send us all your material, we'll put it out for you, and people at the symposium can pick it up. And remember, it's not only the railways itself that will be there. There's always also local suppliers, there's local contractors. All of those will be involved in the symposium. So everybody will benefit by saying, oh, okay, this is the material that's available. I didn't know we can buy it from South Africa or wherever else it comes from. Or, oh, I didn't know there's this alternative for the specific product. So yes, I think the promotional table will actually be quite important.
So it's good to hear everything in terms of the promotional tables. But I just wanted to understand the industry training partners. These partners, aside from having the opportunity to market themselves, from what I understand from you, are also going to be able to present. So what separates their presentation from any other conference? I mean, we're looking for technical, not marketing.
Well, I'm being very clear to potential participating partners, saying to them, what I'm looking for is an academic approach to this, not a marketing approach. I will assist them in doing this, because I do not want to go and say to the symposium, I've got this wonderful product and it's the best in the world. That's not the way it is. I want them to go and talk about that specific material, whatever it is. Let's talk about rail, for example. Don't tell me you've got the best rail in the world, just talk about a rail. How is it designed? How, what is the profile? What is this? What is that? So I want the expert to come and then talk about their specific product. So they will be accompanying the symposium into Africa and talk about their expertise. So when it comes to the delegate, they're basically getting first-hand information from the absolute expert in this field, which is the supplier of that specific product. And of course, for the benefit to the participating partner is that he will be standing in front of these people, and they will get confidence in this guy's ability and say, oh, this guy knows what he's talking about, and with regards to all the other advertising and marketing opportunities, they will know where to go to next time. So listen, I can remember listening to this guy, and he really sounded like he knows what he's talking about. I want to go to him and ask him about his product or whatever I need for a rehabilitation project or whatever the case may be.
So there's a time for these guys to have the marketing opportunity, but when they're standing up on that stage, and it's academic, it is technical.
It's basically all in one. Once again, the marketing opportunity for the participating partner is just to show to the audience how much he knows about his product. To me, that is the best marketing that you can do. I mean, if you stand there and you are confident about your product and you make an impression on the audience, then obviously, when they're going to think about rail, they're going to think, oh, I can remember that guy, he knows what he's talking about. So in itself, it is already fantastic marketing without saying that I've got the best product on the market. But there are also other opportunities as well, where they'll have advertisements that will have a long life. They have opportunity to talk to the audience during tea breaks, during cocktail functions that we'll have, and of course questions and answers and all of those. So there's plenty of opportunity for pure marketing. But I think the academic side of it can be marketing as much as any other form of marketing.
Over and above that, what are the other value adds for companies that are participating as partners?
At the symposium itself, obviously the benefit is short term. It's only for that week and only for the people there. But you want something more. You want something that's got a very long life. And this is where the course material for me plays a very, very important part. So participating partners will not only have to go and stand up in front of the audience and talk about their field of expertise, but their lecture must also be in a written form for the course material. Now the course material will then be printed in an A4 hardcover book, which in itself will have a very long life. And together with the article, there will be an color A4 advertisement. So that book, or a range of books as it may happen, will be kept in a library, on a table, being available, because it's going to be a reference book. So if you want to talk or think about rail, you would go to the reference book and you look up rail, and you will then get the article or course material, whatever you want to call it, and together with that, the participating partner will have his advertisement. So not only can you read up about the product, the material, but you can also see who is the supplier and who was the guy that spoke about it. So the life of the marketing then becomes very long term, because of the availability of the material and the advertisement. So that in itself is a very important part of the advertising. But also my media partner in this whole venture is Railways Africa magazine, which is a very important part to ensure. I cannot do everything myself, and there's a lot of advertising that is required, there's a lot of organizing that is required, and them being my media partner, basically they will take care of most of those aspects. And they will report back on every symposium as well. So I'm pretty sure in the magazine and on the online articles, there's going to be some feedback on what happened in Tanzania, for example. Photos of the symposium, photos of who was there, some stories about it. So there's going to be an international marketing there as well, with regards to what the different people have done. And I'm also thinking that their name, the company's name, will also be mentioned in these articles and so on.
Endorsements for African Track and Technology Symposium.
So already we have one endorsement, which is the South African Institute of Civil Engineering. So especially the South African part of it will be working through SAICI, as they were actually part of this whole idea in the beginning, as they also want to contribute towards their members, especially for CPD points and so on. And what this symposium offers any participant or any delegate to the South African part is they will get one CPD point for every day at the symposium, which is basically 5 CPD points. And that is something that SAICI wanted some time ago, when they also approached me for something similar. And we're basically just combining ideas and say, okay, well, the symposium is one thing, but we're also offering a service to SAICI and partnering with SAICI as well. And SAICI then basically therefore is an endorsing partner in this.
Would you be interested in partnering with universities or technical institutes that are obviously rail related in African countries? Is that an opportunity? Can they be in touch with you to get involved?
Absolutely, especially if they are, now let's put South Africa aside, because I would love to also have a University of South Africa to be part of this, but it seems a bit complex, and to get that going in the short term seems a little bit complex. But if I can invite somebody or a university in South Africa to be part of this, I would really appreciate that. But when it comes to Africa, if there is a railway sector or railway department within a university in Africa, I would absolutely love to talk to them and make them part of the symposium as well.
Kimber Consulting. What does Kimber do?
Well, the 1st of March will be 11 years ago I started a consulting company called Kimber Consulting. And I've done some consulting work in various countries all over Africa. And so basically this whole symposium is a Kimber Consulting venture. And Kimber Consulting is now not only doing consulting work, but is also involved in training, which I think is very important. Anybody who wants to be involved in this venture in any possible way. But to start off with, the best would be to contact me via email, which is leonz@kimber.co.za, and we'll basically take it from there and see what is the next step. I'm also planning a website, so material and notices and programs and all of those will also be available on the website. So all of those are coming up. Interesting times ahead.